Imagine your body as a city. There are roads carrying supplies in, highways carrying people from one place to another, and countless smaller streets connecting neighborhoods that you might never notice. But a city also needs a drainage system. Without it, water and waste would gradually accumulate. Your lymphatic system is, in some ways, part of that hidden infrastructure. It is a vast network of vessels, lymph nodes, and specialized organs spread throughout the body. Its job is not simply to remove toxins, as popular wellness language sometimes suggests. Its real biology is far more interesting. The lymphatic system helps return excess fluid from tissues back toward the bloodstream, transports certain fats absorbed from the digestive system, and plays an important role in immune surveillance. And here's the first surprising idea: there isn't one single lymphatic pathway running through the entire body like a garden hose. Instead, there are many interconnected regional vessels and lymphatic networks. Fluid collected from different tissues follows specific routes toward lymph nodes and eventually toward larger lymphatic ducts. Most of this lymph ultimately returns to the bloodstream near the base of the neck. So when someone says, "One stretch can move lymph through your whole body," we have to slow down and ask, what does "move lymph" actually mean? Lymph begins as fluid that leaves tiny blood vessels and enters the spaces between cells. Once this excess fluid enters lymphatic capillaries, it becomes lymph. From there, it travels through progressively larger vessels. But unlike your cardiovascular system, the lymphatic system doesn't have one central pump equivalent to the heart. That's important. The heart creates a powerful pressure gradient that continuously drives blood around the circulation. Lymphatic movement depends on a collection of mechanisms: contractions of the lymphatic vessels themselves, movement of surrounding muscles, pressure changes created by breathing, and changes in body position. Think about squeezing a soft tube. When surrounding tissues contract or pressure changes around the tube, fluid can be encouraged to move forward. Lymphatic vessels also contain valves that help prevent backward movement. This means your body is constantly creating small mechanical forces that assist lymph transport. Walking, breathing, changing posture, contracting muscles. Even ordinary movements can contribute to this process. And that changes how we should think about stretching. A stretch isn't necessarily a magical switch that suddenly opens the lymphatic system from head to toe. Instead, stretching changes the mechanical environment around tissues. Depending on the movement, it may alter muscle tension, tissue pressure, breathing patterns, and body position. Those effects could influence fluid movement locally or contribute to broader lymphatic dynamics. But the key word is contribute. The lymphatic system is already working before you stretch. It doesn't sit there waiting for one perfect movement to activate it. That's the beautiful part of the biology. Your lymphatic system is not a dormant drainage pipe. It is a living, responsive network working continuously in the background. And once you understand that, the question becomes much more fascinating than which stretch drains the whole body. The better question is, how do movement, breathing, pressure, and the architecture of the lymphatic network work together to keep fluid moving? That is where the real science begins. Now let's look at the stretch itself, because this is where a simple movement can become surprisingly complicated. When you stretch your body, you may feel tension in a muscle, a gentle pull in connective tissue, or a change in pressure around a joint. It can feel as though something inside the body is suddenly being opened. But what is actually happening? A stretch doesn't simply pull lymph through your body like squeezing toothpaste from a tube. The lymphatic system is much more sophisticated than that. When you move or stretch, several mechanical events can happen at the same time. First, your muscles change shape. Muscles are surrounded by connective tissues, blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatic vessels. When a muscle contracts or changes tension, it can alter the pressure around these structures. That mechanical compression can influence the movement of fluid through nearby tissues. This is one reason ordinary physical activity matters for lymphatic transport. Think about walking. Every step involves muscles contracting and relaxing. Those contractions create repeated changes in pressure throughout the tissues. Lymphatic vessels also have valves that help direct fluid forward, rather than allowing it to simply flow backward. Now imagine combining movement with a slow stretch. The stretch may lengthen tissues while changing local pressure and muscle tension. Then, when you release the stretch, the tissues return toward their resting state. That creates a changing mechanical environment rather than one constant force. But there's another player that is easy to overlook: breathing. When you take a deep breath, your diaphragm moves. That changes pressure inside the chest and abdomen. Those pressure differences can influence the movement of blood and lymphatic fluid. This is why controlled breathing often appears alongside movement-based techniques intended to encourage lymphatic circulation. But again, we need to be precise. A deep breath doesn't suddenly empty the entire lymphatic system. Instead, breathing contributes to a larger collection of forces that influence fluid movement. Now add posture. If you lie down, sit, stand, bend, or raise an arm, gravity and tissue pressure change. The relationship between different parts of the body changes with them. So a stretch is not an isolated event. It happens inside a constantly changing mechanical system. There is also an important distinction between blood flow and lymph flow. Blood is propelled primarily by the heart. Lymph doesn't have an equivalent central pump. Its movement depends heavily on local vessel contractions, surrounding muscle activity, breathing-related pressure changes, and other mechanical forces. That makes movement particularly interesting. Your body is essentially using its own motion to assist a system that doesn't have a giant pump at its center. But this is also where exaggerated claims can appear. You may hear that a particular stretch flushes toxins, cleanses the entire lymphatic system, or drains every part of the body. Those statements sound impressive, but they go far beyond what the basic physiology tells us. A stretch can change mechanical forces in the body. Movement can support normal fluid transport. Breathing can influence pressure gradients. Muscle contractions can assist lymph movement, but none of that means one specific stretch acts like a universal reset button. The more scientifically interesting explanation is actually simpler: movement creates mechanical forces, and the lymphatic system responds to those forces as part of its normal physiology. So the next time you stretch, don't imagine that you're opening a secret drain. Imagine something more remarkable. You're changing the physical environment in which billions of cells, vessels, muscles, and tissues are constantly interacting. And that small change may be one piece of a much larger system designed to keep fluid moving through the body. This is where we need to separate an interesting idea from an exaggerated claim. The phrase, "one stretch drains your entire body," sounds powerful. It suggests that there is one hidden movement, one perfect position, or one secret technique that suddenly activates the lymphatic system from head to toe. But the human body doesn't work that way. The lymphatic system is not one empty container waiting to be drained. It is a complex biological network with different regions, vessels, lymph nodes, ducts, and specialized pathways. Lymph from different tissues enters different lymphatic vessels and follows specific routes before eventually returning to the bloodstream. So imagine trying to empty an entire city through one small street. It doesn't make sense. There are thousands of roads, neighborhoods, intersections, and routes. You can't simply open one road and expect every vehicle in the city to immediately travel through it. The lymphatic system is similar. Fluid from your arms doesn't necessarily take the same initial route as fluid from your legs. Lymphatic drainage from the abdomen, chest, head, and limbs involves different regional networks. These networks eventually connect with larger lymphatic channels, but the journey is not one simple straight line. And this matters when we talk about stretching. Suppose you perform a deep stretch involving your neck and shoulders. You may alter muscle tension, tissue pressure, posture, and breathing. Those changes could influence local fluid dynamics and contribute to lymphatic movement in that region. But that doesn't mean the stretch has mechanically pulled lymph out of your feet, legs, abdomen, and entire body. The effect is much more subtle. The body is a connected system, but connected does not mean instantly drained from one location. There is another important point: lymph movement is continuous. Your lymphatic system doesn't wait until you perform a particular exercise before beginning its work. It is operating throughout the day. When you walk, your muscles contract. When you breathe, your diaphragm moves. When your heart beats, blood circulates. When you change position, pressure relationships throughout your body shift. All of these processes contribute to the environment in which lymphatic transport occurs. So instead of imagining one stretch as a powerful pump, it is more accurate to think of stretching as one small mechanical input into a much larger system. And this distinction is important because the word drain can be misleading. The lymphatic system isn't simply carrying unwanted substances towards some giant waste reservoir. Lymph transports excess interstitial fluid, immune cells, proteins, and other substances through a regulated biological pathway. Lymph nodes also act as important sites of immune activity. The goal isn't simply to flush everything out. The goal is to maintain fluid balance and support immune function. That doesn't make movement less interesting. Actually, it makes movement more fascinating. A simple stretch can change tension across muscles and connective tissues. It can encourage deeper breathing. It can change posture. It can temporarily modify pressure in different parts of the body. But the resulting effects should be understood as supporting normal physiological processes, not as a dramatic whole body detoxification event. So when you hear someone claim that a single stretch can drain the entire lymphatic system, ask a simple question: what exactly is being moved, through which pathway, and what evidence shows that one movement produces a whole body effect? That question cuts through the hype, because the real story isn't that your body has a secret stretch that unlocks everything. The real story is that your body already possesses an extraordinary network capable of continuously regulating fluid movement. And everyday movement, breathing, and muscle activity are all part of that system. There is something fascinating about the lymphatic system. It doesn't have a heart. Your cardiovascular system has a powerful central pump, the heart, that pushes blood through an enormous network of vessels. But the lymphatic system has no single organ performing that same job. So how does lymph move? The answer is surprisingly mechanical. Your body moves it. Every time you walk, breathe, bend, stretch, or contract a muscle, you create small changes in pressure inside your tissues. Those changes can help encourage lymph through lymphatic vessels. Think of a soft tube with tiny one-way doors inside it. When pressure is applied around the tube, fluid can be pushed forward. When the pressure disappears, the valves help prevent the fluid from simply flowing backward. Lymphatic vessels use a similar principle. Many larger lymphatic vessels contain valves, and some lymphatic vessels can also contract rhythmically on their own. But external forces matter too. The surrounding muscles can compress lymphatic vessels as they contract, helping move lymph forward. This is one reason physical activity is so interesting from a lymphatic perspective. Consider something as ordinary as walking. When your calf muscles contract, they compress tissues around blood vessels and lymphatic vessels. Then the muscles relax. This repeated contraction and relaxation pattern creates mechanical changes that can assist fluid movement. Your body is effectively using movement as part of its transportation system. Now add breathing. This is where things become even more interesting. Every breath changes pressure inside the chest and abdomen. When you inhale, your diaphragm moves downward. When you exhale, it moves upward again. These movements create pressure changes throughout the trunk. Because major lymphatic channels pass through the chest and eventually connect with the bloodstream near the neck. Pressure changes associated with respiration can influence lymphatic transport. But we should be careful here. Breathing isn't a magic pump that suddenly flushes every lymph vessel in your body. It is better understood as one mechanical force among several. Muscle contractions, lymphatic vessel contractions, arterial pulsations, respiration, body position, and other factors can all contribute to lymph movement. Now consider what happens when you combine breathing with stretching. Imagine slowly raising your arms while taking a controlled breath. The shoulders move, the chest expands, the diaphragm changes position, muscles contract and relax, connective tissues change tension. The shape and pressure relationships around nearby vessels shift. None of these events is spectacular by itself, but biology often works through accumulation. One small pressure change, then another, over thousands of breaths and countless movements throughout the day. These mechanical forces become part of the body's normal fluid transport system. This also explains why sitting completely still for long periods is so different from regular movement. When you're walking, your muscles are repeatedly contracting. When you're sitting, that muscular activity is greatly reduced. This doesn't mean lymph suddenly stops moving when you sit. It doesn't. Your lymphatic vessels and other physiological mechanisms continue functioning. But movement can provide additional mechanical assistance. And that brings us back to the original idea of the O1 perfect stretch. Perhaps the most useful lesson isn't that one particular stretch has extraordinary powers. It's that your entire body is already participating in lymph movement every time you move and breathe. Stretching can be part of that picture. Walking can be part of it. Normal muscle contractions can be part of it. Even something as automatic as breathing contributes. The remarkable discovery isn't a secret exercise, it's the mechanism itself. Your body doesn't need a single giant pump to move lymph. Instead, it uses a distributed system of tiny pumps, valves, pressure changes, muscle activity, and breathing, working together continuously in the background. And once you understand that, an ordinary stretch suddenly becomes more interesting. Not because it magically drains your whole body, but because it reveals just how intelligently the body uses movement itself to keep its internal environment functioning. Now we arrive at the most important question: what does the science actually support? Because it is easy to take a fascinating biological mechanism and turn it into a dramatic health claim. We know that the lymphatic system is essential for maintaining fluid balance and supporting immune function. We also know that lymph movement is influenced by multiple mechanical factors, including contractions of lymphatic vessels, surrounding muscle activity, breathing, related pressure changes, and body position. So it is reasonable to say that movement matters. But that is very different from saying that one particular stretch can flush or detox the entire body. The evidence does not justify turning a normal physiological process into a miracle claim. Let's return to the basic biology. Lymph is formed when excess fluid from the spaces surrounding cells enters lymphatic vessels. It then travels through progressively larger vessels, and along the way, may pass through lymph nodes. Eventually, lymph is returned to the bloodstream. This is a regulated transport system. It isn't a bucket that becomes full of mysterious toxins and then needs to be emptied with a special exercise. That's an important distinction. When people say a stretch detoxes the lymph, what exactly do they mean? If they mean that movement can support normal lymphatic fluid transport, there is a reasonable physiological basis for that idea. If they mean that one stretch rapidly removes harmful substances from every part of the body, that's a much stronger claim, and one that requires much stronger evidence. This is where scientific thinking becomes useful. Instead of asking, "Does this stretch feel powerful?" we should ask what biological mechanism is being proposed. Has it been measured? Was the effect observed in humans? Was there a control group? Was the effect actually caused by the stretch, or could breathing, movement, posture, relaxation, or other factors explain it. These questions matter because our bodies are complicated. You might perform a stretch and immediately feel lighter, warmer, more relaxed, or less stiff. Those sensations can be real. But a real sensation doesn't automatically prove that the entire lymphatic system has been dramatically drained. The distinction between feeling an effect and demonstrating a physiological mechanism is one of the most important lessons in science. That doesn't mean stretching is useless. Far from it. Stretching can be a valuable part of physical activity and mobility routines. Combined with regular movement and comfortable breathing, it may help people maintain mobility and encourage them to avoid prolonged inactivity. But we should keep expectations realistic. There is no need to turn an ordinary stretch into a supernatural event. The lymphatic system is already doing something remarkable without our help, continuously collecting excess tissue fluid, transporting immune-related materials, and returning fluid toward the circulation. And when you move, breathe, and use your muscles, you're interacting with that system in ways that are biologically meaningful. So perhaps the most accurate conclusion is also the simplest. There probably isn't a single magical stretch that drains your entire body. What does make sense is the broader principle that regular movement, muscle activity, breathing, and changes in body position can all contribute to the mechanical forces involved in lymph transport. That's a much more interesting story than a miracle exercise. Because the real discovery isn't hidden inside one stretch. It's hidden inside the system itself. A network that works continuously. A network without one central pump. A network assisted by muscles, breathing, pressure, valves, and movement. And once you understand that, you don't need exaggerated claims to appreciate how extraordinary your body really is.